Hello, and welcome to the Voice of the Victim podcast. This is Ryan. I just wanted to let you know that this is a bonus episode. We actually posted the main episode of the week already. That's episode 60, where we finished up Mary Vincent's story. So we have 2 episodes for you this week because of some scheduling issues that came up. But this bonus episode is a chat we had with Kate from Ignorance Was Bliss. You probably already know Kate, but if somehow you don't, we hope you enjoy getting to know her here. Her podcast is called Ignorance Was Bliss, and it's linked in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you guys all so much for listening every week. We really appreciate you guys. But now, here's our conversation with Kate.
Guys,
Pretty good.
Yeah.
We're happy that it's finally starting to be spring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It snowed this morning though, so.
Yeah.
No.
But it stopped pretty quick. So, how are you?
I'm hanging in. This time of year it kind of blows me out of the water every time, and I hate that. You know, it's just one of these, like, it's predictable, and I can't do a thing about it, and that combination just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I spent from March 8th to March 17th, 2010 in a coma, and every year it just comes back and hits me.
Oh.
And so, yeah, it's just stupid, you know, because like I know better. I know it's not a big deal. I know I'm fine, but still.
You mean like it all comes back to you this time of year? Because this was around.
I have tremendous survivor guilt. Based on the statistics of who survives what I went through.
Oh, what are the statistics?
So there's 4 million births in the U.S. every year. Of those, about 100 get sick the way that I did.
Whoa.
Of that 100, 98 die.
Whoa.
Yeah, one loses all 4 limbs, and one walks away.
Wow.
Wow. You are 1 in 4 million then.
Yeah, exactly. And so it bothers me because, you know, you get that whole why me thing and that existential angst, and it's all stupid.
Well, there's a lot of people that are glad that you're still around.
No, I appreciate that. I do. It's just one of those, like, I feel guilty for feeling bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Emotions are stupid. So,
Can't imagine.
it's not that I snap out of it on the 17th. It's more just that there becomes this awareness, like, okay, I woke up. What are we going to do with it now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, you're doing a live stream again tonight?
Yeah, Facebook Live thing. I'm basically going to tell the story of how I got sick because I want people to understand, like, why it is I can't just snap out of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what it is that I'm dealing with, because I feel bad. Like, I know people want me to be happy, and I appreciate that so much, and so I kind of want to explain, like, here's why I can't just snap out of it, but I'm trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really important aspect to have, because we talk about a lot. There's always people that seem to want to tell you how you should feel, but there's always things about an individual that they don't understand.
Hey, you did a great job on the peripheral, by the way. I just listened to that, like, a couple weeks ago. It was very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, that was and poor Justin. He breaks my heart now. He's having a really, really rough time.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I feel really bad for him too.
So
I love that podcast.
Yeah, same. And so I'm hoping he can rebound, but he's just in a really dark way right now, and I hate that.
I know. He's another one like you. He's inspired us so much, and I mean, we owe a lot of where we are now to him as well. And yeah,
he's a sweetheart. And
yeah,
he's really helpful. He's really good. But that's the thing. You know, I find a lot of, like, there's a handful of people online. Chris from Play Comics and Megan from Oh No Lit Class. Derek from Rolling Misadventures now. He ended his other show. Paul from Varmints, Courtney from Cult of Domesticity. Like, there's this list of people that are the sweetest people. They're so, sort of supportive and helpful, and they're just the best people I know. And they just won't believe me. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just like, oh, no, I'm not that. No, I'm not, and I understand where that comes from, but it breaks my heart.
Interesting.
I don't know what that's about. I kind of do. I think that empathy comes from taking on other people's, not pain, but struggles. And in order to do that, you have to sort of weigh yourself you have to put them up higher than you, like make them more important than you, so that you can pay attention and absorb the shit that they're going through. Then there's this tendency to stay weighed down.
I've never thought of it like that before, but it does make sense. I feel like the same way about that, because there's always people commenting about us being like really sweet and stuff, but then
oh my god, you guys are the cutest ever. I adore you guys.
Thank you. But like when we know ourselves on the inside, and we know ourselves a lot better than anyone can from just listening to our show, and it's like we don't feel like we deserve all those comments
them again.
It's the same thing. I think if you spend time, whether it's people you know or whether it's your show, if you spend time absorbing somebody else's struggle, like I said, I think it weighs you down. I think it, like, I suck at taking compliments. I have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that.
But I think that's a thing, and I don't know why, with like the difficulty absorbing compliments and the difficulty, my best guess is that it's because empathy makes you either approach the person, like true empathy makes you either approach the person like as an equal or put them a little bit above you.
I never thought of it that way before. To me personally, I think that's a really good quality, Oh,
I mean, I think it's one of the most important things that a human can do, and it's the hardest. I mean, you don't see it a lot in the real world.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that you compliment them and they're like, yeah, I know. Like, they just take it and they're like, I know, I'm really cool. And no one wants to be around those people.
And I think it's important to know your strengths. You know what I mean? Like, I recognize that I'm good talking with people. I recognize that I have sometimes too much empathy because I take it with me and I carry, and I hold it. I still carry scars from, 10 years ago with people I saw in the ER or whatever. So I recognize that as a strong quality of mine, the fact that I can do it and continue doing it. So I think that's important. My daughter is this amazing artist, and she knows that this is her strength, and she I think that's, like, a lot of us struggle with, like, it's like the humble brag fear, or like,
yeah.
But I think it's not.
It's like what you were saying in your last episode about, well, it kind of relates about being an artist, and that doesn't mean you're a specific type of person. It just means you're an artist.
Right, but own it, like that you are. Own that you have strengths in that area.
Yeah, because how can you get really good at something if you don't, realize that you've reached a certain point and you can keep improving on that?
Right, exactly. And I think it's super important to know that, like, this is my strength. I'm good at this. I'm good at this thing. And that way you can strengthen it. You know what I mean? Like, you can focus on that. And you can let other stuff go. And people struggle with that. Like, okay, Ryan, what are you good at?
Music. Easy.
I guess, I'd like to think I'm good at thinking about how my actions and words will affect other people before I do it,
Rosie, what are you good at?
What am I good at? I guess that is hard to answer when you're put on the spot.
Okay, Rosie's good at being honest. That's what I...
No matter how brutal. Yeah, I'm good at being honest. I am.
Yeah, and those are really important things. Go. Sorry, I didn't realize you had more things. Go.
I'm just saying open book syndrome. That's what I've got.
Yeah.
I can't hide my emotions, and I'll let you know what they are at the time. That's what I've got.
And that's a skill. That's an important thing. And Okay, so Ryan, what are you bad at?
I'm bad at reciprocating. We were just talking about this. Reciprocating when people ask me a question. I'll just answer it and then I'll just sit there like la 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 instead of
you asked
reciprocating.
Kate how she was doing, and that was very proud of you.
I had to go out of. I had to actively think about like,
Did you?
oh, I should ask Kate how she's doing because she asked me. I don't know if I have like mild autism or something, but
no, it's such a guy thing. Oh my god.
Okay.
I have a bunch. It is. I have several. I have a bunch of friends online, and I'll check in the morning. Hey, how's it going? And the women will tell me how they're doing, and then they'll ask me, "How are you doing?" And the guys will be like, "I'm good."
Well, I guess that makes me feel better to know I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
and I mean, I've asked them, like, what is your problem? And they'll say, like, oh, I just assume. I assume that if you ask me, that then you'll tell me the answer. I'm like, no! I assume that you'll ask if you want to know.
Right.
That's funny.
So I'm working on that.
Rosie, what are you bad at?
I'm bad. There's a lot of things I'm bad at. I'm bad at being...
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Being tactful.
You see what I'm saying? We're so good at finding the things we're bad at, and we can't answer, what are you good at? I hate that about humans. Humans are so stupid. Like, we all are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I do the same thing. Like, if you ask me what I'm good at, I'm like, I got 7 things right now, but I won't say them. And if you ask me what I'm bad at, I'm like, I got 100 things, and I'm going to say them all right now.
Yeah, right.
This is really interesting, though, because a year ago when we first started our podcast, and you're going to hate this because there's a compliment coming, but when we first started our podcast, I was not good at looking at myself and identifying things, that I could do better at. And then, I don't know, part of being part of this community and seeing all these different perspectives, and thanks to hearing your show and how you looked at crimes and both sides of it, and how did this criminal get to a place where they could do this and stuff like that, it made me a lot more observant, I would say, and able to look at myself and kind of identify things that I need to work on. So, I mean, I've grown a lot just in this past year, and a lot of it is thanks to people like you,
Aww.
So, because I don't know if I would have been able to answer the question you asked me a year ago.
Yeah, personal growth, for sure.
But sorry for the compliment.
That's so funny. No, I mean, but I get, like, that's why I'm still doing it, is I recognize that I can. I said it before, that the upside. It's not even an upside. It's like the sort of big friggin' deal of having a show is that I started it because I had things to say, but it turned around and sort of saved my life.
Yeah.
And I still feel like over dramatic when I say that, but I think it's accurate. Like, I was losing myself. I had lost any sense of usefulness or productivity, competency, like all of those things. Like, I didn't feel like I was contributing to the world anymore. And I had come to terms with that. Like, if that's the best I ever got, okay. I had created children. I was raising them. They were doing okay. And if that was the best I ever did, okay. And so starting the podcast, it was like, at first it was just because I had things to say. And then I started connecting with people, and I have, I don't know, 50 names on my whiteboard. Of people I have talked to or will talk to or want to or whatever. And that's all, this feeling of connection. And I have received emails and texts or whatever, DMs from people that are not unsolicited dick pics that are like, the way you said this changed things, helped me.
Yeah.
Or whatever, because I recognize that I look at things in a fucked up way. Like, that's one of my skills. If you tell me A or B, I'm going to find a C. Like, that's my thing.
Yeah. That's so interesting, though, because you've been through so much stuff before you started the podcast and even since you started the podcast. But just listening to your podcast, you're a rock star, and no one would ever realize, all the personal struggles and health issues and stuff that you're dealing with, because you in your show, you come across as such a rock star. I was like,
I know how to fake it. Yeah, that's true. The hardest thing about going on disability is that I know how to fake it, and I faked it for a long time. And, I was in chronic pain, and I was increasingly struggling with that, like just not doing well, not coping well with it. And I could not find medications that worked, because if I had meds that addressed the pain, I was too stoned basically to go to work. You know what I mean? Like I was not functioning well at work. And so I had to choose, do I want pain or do I want functionality? And so that was bad. And then I broke my back, and that that was the sort of straw for my camel. And choosing to say, like, I can't fake this anymore. That was hard, because that's one of my, like, if you call me in the middle of the night, I will answer the phone like I've been awake the whole time.
Really? That's
wow.
interesting. Huh.
That's a unique skill.
I know how to be like, here we are. I'm good. Like, I know how to fake like everything's okay.
Wow.
So, yeah. Plus, things are okay. When I'm interviewing, when I'm talking, things are okay. This is my zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we finally are
feels...
starting to feel like our podcast is our zone now.
Yeah. You talk to so many people and generate conversation, but, like, we could never do that unless we had something to talk about,
It's true. We
do interviews with people, but they kind of already have a story to tell that we can piggyback off of. But if we were just having a random conversation like this day after day when we're recording, it would just be like, what do we talk about?
Cats. It would just be cats. Everything.
I have cats. It's fine. Talk to me about podcasting for you. Like, what has it done for you?
Well, it's given me a lot of kind of like clarity in a way. I don't know. It's been so cool to actually get a response back from listeners. Like, we've gotten emails and messages like saying how our show matters and that they appreciated my personal story. And, it was like scary starting it up. But now I kind of feel like we're getting in the groove, and I don't know, I just feel so much better about doing it in general. Like, we're actually making somewhat of a difference. So
we've definitely both built up a lot of confidence since we started.
Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, this is worth it. I don't know. It definitely needed like the boost of our listeners to email us to make us feel more secure, I think. I think that our podcast has brought us closer together as a couple, too. An old married couple.
Yeah. Well, we definitely communicate a lot more because we're kind of forced to talk together for an hour each week. So it's like,
we're forced.
If we're going through a rut, we're still forced to talk together, and it helps us communicate.
Well, and we have to talk about our cases before and after, too. So that, I don't know, it's just been nice.
Yeah. How long have you guys been married?
It'll be 6 years in June.
So you're getting there to the point where it's no longer newlyweds. That's cute. Mm-hmm. I think you guys are f***ing adorable. I just do. I'm allowed to say that because I'm old. It's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm really glad that we're doing it together. And it's cool to see you and Willem, too, like him being so supportive of you and helping you with the live streams and all the different projects you do. And, like, it's really cool to do it as a couple because we can do it from the comfort of our own home pretty much anytime we're free.
And I found that our listeners like it, that they've commented about us being a couple. So that's been cool. We gotta...
Do you see, I mean, two things. One is like, yeah, Willem's been great. Like, when I started it up, he was like, look, I can't sign on, for the time commitment. And we didn't have any idea the time commitment. Like, we thought it would be a couple hours a week, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that was a surprise. But he was like, even if it's that, like, he's a professor and a dean. Like, he just can't carve out the time. Plus 4 kids. And so he's taken on way more of the parenting when he's home because we basically hand off. Like, we have less time together because when he's home, I'm like, okay, see, I'm going to the basement because I can't record when the kids are home. When I'm home alone with the kids. So that has been a thing. And that makes all the difference just to have the family behind me. Like, the kids get what I'm doing and everybody's been great. So that's priceless. Like, there's no way I could do it without family support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That reminds me of an interview I heard with Minds of Madness. It was from a long time ago, but they were talking about how that was kind of like Tyler's routine is he would get home from work and then he'd go downstairs and research, and at the same time it was helping their relationship because he was doing something that made him happy, you know, and was making him more 100%. Decent to be around. So.
Yeah, no, it totally is. Me feeling more like a human being again has helped our relationship.
That's
and
so cool.
You know, and because I'm busy with this and he's busy with work, we schedule date nights now, which we hadn't done. I mean, in ever probably. And we've been married 18 years, so to start date nights now it's cute. It is cute.
Yeah,
I will acknowledge that. I was going to ask you guys, you're basically, this is a job. It's at least part-time that you're working together. Do you have like a work relationship and an us relationship, or does it all bleed together?
To me, it bleeds together. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'd say it's all just part of our normal relationship because, like, I don't know. I have fun writing because even though I was terrible at school, like, writing was always one of the things I was good at. So I do all the research mostly and the writing. Rosie does the odd episode now and then, but like,
I know it's way more Ryan than me. He's like the backbone of our podcast.
It's probably like a terrible thing to have sometimes, but I can't just sit and enjoy myself very often without thinking about work that I could be doing. And like,
Jesus Christ, I'm married to you. That's terrible. Sorry, Rosie, but
well, I have the opposite. I have this terrible curse where I love to relax and enjoy myself.
I'm saying.
So.
I'm envious of that because like every time we sit down to relax and like watch a movie, I'm always like, oh man, I could be getting ahead on research for the podcast or editing or something like that, and like I just have this need to constantly be working on something that'll last, and I guess it's helped with keeping the podcast consistent. But
it totally has.
At the same time, it really adds to my anxiety levels.
It works with your work schedule too, for you to be more of a writer and stuff too.
Yeah, but back to the original question, like I feel like our relationship really. Like, the podcast is just a part of it, and we probably should view it more as a business, but at this point, we view it more as just, like, we're trying to get our message out there and just help other people to see viewpoints they might not have thought about before, or encourage other people that are struggling with holding stuff inside to feel like they can speak up and get their things that are tormenting them out without feeling ashamed. So
well, we're gonna start. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I've been talking
I was just
a
gonna
lot.
say, I know you're chatting up this whole thing. I was just gonna say that we're going to start talking about the grooming process and how you can tell if you're being groomed or not, and like if you, I don't know, I want to talk about what sexual abuse is and how even though it has the word abuse tied to it, when you're a kid, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're being hurt. Like, things feel good. And I want to talk about how people are so criticizing about how, why didn't you say you were being touched, or why didn't you say this or that? But it was like, you know, at the time you don't think of it as abuse. It ties with the whole Michael Jackson case. And
well, yeah, you were inspired by Oprah commenting on the Leaving Neverland.
Yeah, I love Oprah. She just did this huge thing about it. And ranting now, but that's what I want to start doing in our pod is like warning signs, what you can do, how to know if you were abused. I don't know.
Well, and I think your passion behind that is, I mean, I do a lot of the legwork. I guess I'm naturally empathetic and just want to help people, you know, with whatever I can, and I also have the drive to want to create, but if not for Rosie and her personal experiences and her drive to, you know, behind this topic, I would have never started a podcast like this.
Yeah, that is true. You were never into the true crime until I showed you Gen Y.
Yeah.
It's all their fault.
It is.
I mean, I think what you're talking about is you're talking about a deeper dive than I do in an episode, but that concept of normalizing, and when people say, why doesn't somebody report, like, that's the kind of question that I think needs to be answered.
Or even, like, people are so concerned about, was there penetration? Or, like, what exactly physically happened? When it's more about, like, the emotional manipulation and seduction of children and their ability to just, like, keep everything inside because of the threats and their being ashamed. When it's, it's so much more about than just physical contact with people.
Well, yeah, and like they said on the Oprah episode, kids don't have the language to be able to tell anyone else what's going on when they're that young, but it leads to a lot of issues in the future that if it doesn't get dealt with, because they finally start to understand what happened to them, and then it's like, oh, this was really messed up.
Yeah, and that goes up to being teenagers too. It just all the psychology behind sexual abuse intrigues me, and I want to get more of that on our show eventually.
No, I think it's super important because, yeah, you get a lot of sort of victim blaming. Why didn't they tell? Why didn't they report? And it's like, well, okay, they couldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't have the tools. They didn't have, and so one of my master's thesis was about sex offender registries, and how basically they're stupid.
I'm curious about this.
They create a false sense of safety, for one, because there are people who will literally do a search on the local sex offender registry in order to decide where they're going to live, and they'll choose a neighborhood that doesn't have people popping up. Right. And it damages people who are registered sex offenders because you have to report in a public way. Like I'm fine with police knowing where they are. Like that's, if they got to know, they got to know. Like law enforcement's got to do what it does. And I don't have any real opinions on that because the law enforcement system is so fraught right now. There's just, there's so much going on there that I don't even want to touch it. But as far as, sort of normal people, for whatever that means, that for one, you get this false sense of safety because you think, oh, there's no one in my neighborhood. And meanwhile, I mean, who do you have sex with? I know who you guys have sex with. I hope I know who you guys have sex with. Is the people that you're closest to. And the people that you see every day, or often the people that you engage with, and you get to know, because attraction is easy. You can be attracted to anybody. Russell Crowe is hot, right? But I'm not going to have sex with Russell Crowe, right? I mean, I'm not. It's a thing. I'm not. Although he's on my list, so I could. If he showed up at my door, I'd be allowed.
Oh my gosh, we have those lists too.
Yeah, I'm saying. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask. But I had to say mine on Mike. You can say yours. But so who do you actually have sex with are people that you are both attracted to and have access to. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, there's always going to be rape. There's always going to be stranger crime. Like, that's going to happen. And that's why police should have some. I think the registries are a little too broad right now. But. Yeah,
like how you can be on it for peeing in public.
Right. Exactly. And stuff like that. And so let's narrow it down a little bit, maybe. But ultimately, like, if police have to have that, police can have that. Okay. But parents will look at those lists and think, I'm fine. It's cool. There's no there's no sex offenders in my neighborhood. Go ahead, kiddo. Go hang out with your Boy Scout leader, your uncle, your priest, your neighbor, right? The friendly Mr. Jones that's next door that always has cookies. Go ahead. Do you know what I mean? Like, you think you're safe because they're not registered. Well, that just means they haven't been caught. And so...
most of them are practicing in secret.
Of course. and so there's this, like, to me, I want to get rid of those registries, the public ones, altogether. And for one, yes, teach kids how to speak, how to recognize boundaries, and how to speak about them in clearer ways. And for another, to teach parents what some of the signs are and also how to ask.
Yeah.
It's like parents don't ask a kid, hey, when you were over at Friendly Mr. Jones's house, did he ask you to drop trow? Like, they don't say things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the more questions you ask, the more comfortable a kid gets in answering, and they understand then that you're engaged and curious, and so they'll tell you when things go wrong.
Yeah. And they get used to that, having that open communication and feeling comfortable talking to their parents about stuff. I don't want to throw my parents under the bus because they did a lot of things right, but I wasn't really ever comfortable with talking to them about personal stuff because there was always that fear of shame. I mean, we talk about on the podcast a lot the importance of communication and making your children comfortable with being able to open up to you and stuff. And I think that's such an important thing to think about, is it's not only asking, but it's also making sure they're in a shame-free, judgment-free zone and that they can open up to you about stuff.
Absolutely. And I have a child of abuse in my home. She came to us when she was 2 and the damage had been done.
Wow.
And we are having to change entirely our definition of what is okay. What is good enough, what is safe, and also having to articulate in a very different way. And I'm finding, like, it's not that hard. It's not that big a deal to articulate things. It's awkward the first couple times, but it gets to a point where you can look at a kid and say, like, are you able to keep your hands to yourself? Did your friends keep their hands to themselves? I need you to come straight home. It is not okay. Like, one big thing with kids is that they're taught that it's okay to hug people, like anybody, anytime. And we've had to tell our youngest, like, you don't hug anybody outside the house.
Huh.
Because she has no boundaries, like, at all. And, like, I've said it before, and I'm not, like, speaking in hyperbole. If you came to my house, either one of you, and just walked in and looked at her and smiled and held out your hand, she would take your hand and go with you.
Oh, that's scary.
It's terrifying. Like, we just took the kids to Florida to Universal, and I mean, it was constant tag team. Like, my 9-year-old, we were like, he'll find his way back to us, and our little one, our 6-year-old, my husband and I were constantly, where is she? Eyes on her at all times. And for a 6-year-old, that shouldn't really be necessary. You want to know where they are within a 10-foot radius, in public, but it should be okay for them to wander off and you call them back. And with her, you can't. And because as much as we tell her don't hug people, she's all up in people's grill.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's why child protection laws exist, and because it's really, the responsibility falls on the adults, because kids don't know if what they're doing is inappropriate at the time, and it's a big responsibility for adults to be able to identify if something is over the line and stop it or not do it.
Yeah,
it's just perfect illustration of that.
Yeah, because if you start hugging people, that's a very easy line into other physical contact, and most kids can understand, like, there's good touch and bad touch, right? Or a hug is okay, but a pat on the ass is not. Like, most kids are fine with that. She's not. She needs very black and white lines, and it has to be no touching at all. And I hate that. But at the same time, I feel like, look, this is the kind of language you can use in a kindergarten.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Not everybody's your friend. They use that word friends, and gag reflex. Like, oh my God. Okay, friends, let's go. Like, they're not all friends, and kids need to learn that, like, not everybody is your friend. And there are some assholes in your kindergarten class, and you need to keep an eye on them because they're little shitheads. Like, it's okay to learn that instead of this false friendship thing, because then what do you do?
Yeah.
You know, if somebody hurts you, like my kid has engaged in inappropriate touch at school. I mean, it was like her second week in kindergarten that I get a call that she followed another kid into the bathroom and locked the stall. You know, and a kindergarten should be way older than than that. And so, you know, it's things like, it's to the point now where the school doesn't even call me every time. They just keep a log and they let me know.
Wow.
You know, and so your definition of normal changes. But like, that's the thing, is like, I recognize so the fundamental reason we adopted Danielle instead of letting DCF take her, because DCF was like literally on my door every day checking in, because Danielle's biological mother had checked out in many ways, and it became a case of, look, either you're keeping her or we're taking her. Like, there is no possible way that her biological mother can handle parenthood right now.
Yeah.
And we already had 3 kids, and I had a broken back, and I had developed epilepsy, and so there's just a lot going on, you know, like, it's like, I don't think I need this in my life right now. Like, I didn't want a 4th kid. I was done. But who else is going to recognize that something's wrong when a little girl is cute and blonde and smiles a lot, and she's very smart? So people assume that, you know, she's book smart, she's school smart, so she's fine. And we recognize when she's faking. My husband being an educator and myself being a psychologist, it was like, well, we know how to articulate these things because of training. And it's like, why are other parents not trained in this? Hand out a pamphlet when the baby's born, or when they go to preschool or kindergarten.
Yeah.
I climbed up on this soapbox and I didn't even realize I was doing it. Sorry.
No, we're learning. We're completely unqualified because we aren't parents, and we don't. But that's part of the reason we're so scared to have kids, is because you don't need any kind of certificate to be able to give birth. You know, you just can, and that makes you a parent. And you know, you sometimes
they hand you this thing and they're like, keep it alive. And you're like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you were just saying, a lot of parents aren't educated on how to identify those signs and stuff, and it's scary to us because we just don't want to mess up another person's life. I think you said to us a long time ago, if you can't imagine life without a child, then that's the only reason you should have a child, you know?
Right. No, I totally believe, because we're pressured in this culture. When are you going to have kids? Like, first it's when are you going to get married, and then it's when you're going to have kids, as though, you know, like the uterus is the sole reason to function. And I'm like,
right.
No. You know, I hate that so much, because I don't have a baby just to have a baby. Just because you want something cute. They're not cute. They're not cute. I mean, I can tell you stories. The bodily fluids alone, like, they're not cute.
Yeah, it helps me being a nanny for 5 years.
I bet.
Oh yeah, you get your
have
fill.
my baby fix. Yeah.
And it's just this, like, don't, you know, kids, I think on some level will know if they're just created just for the sake of creation. Like, I think they'll figure that out.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, I always wanted kids. I wanted kids from a very young age, and I had them. You know, I had my first at 22, and then I knew what I wanted, and it was on purpose, and blah, blah. But still, they handed her to me, and they were like, take her home. And I was like, wait, what?
I'm ready now? You're going to let me just walk off with this kid?
You know I don't have a license for this thing, right? Like, I don't know how to drive it.
It's funny, but it's also really scary.
It's terrifying.
That's why there are so many stories to talk about. It's because people don't know what they're doing when they take kids home, and sometimes they mess up really bad.
And I mean, Danielle's biological mother, we knew her very well. She was our nanny. Live in.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a story. I can tell you that one. I want to stop babbling, but I'll tell you that one.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So I got very, very, very sick after I had Isaac in 2010. And my husband had to go back to work. And I was not, I mean, I was on home visiting nurse care, which is basically your insurance company agrees, like, you're too sick to leave the house. You know, which is no small feat. So I was home for 9 months after I got out of the hospital. I was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and then I was home for 9 months. And so we had to hire a nanny because I couldn't drive, I couldn't go anywhere, and I couldn't reliably stay awake. Like, I would just crash. And this, I mean, a woman technically, but this girl, she was like 19, something like that when we hired her, but younger. Sort of developmentally, you know, just very like, oh, she's cute kind of thing. And she called, you know those really creepy lifelike baby dolls?
Yeah.
You know, the ones that like wander into the uncanny valley.
Baby Whisper or whatever.
Whatever. You know more about than I do already, so I don't want to have this conversation with you anymore.
Oh, Baby's Secret. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh, dear God.
It's this creepy toy.
Oh, my God. So she had like 8 of them.
What?
You know, whatever. And, you know, you try not to yuck anybody's yum, but I was like, but whatever. She was a good nanny. Like, she got how we parented and fit in very well. And so about a year into the process, when my son was about a year old, we got a house that had an in-law apartment, and we let her move in so that we were trading rent for childcare. So, you know, it was a good setup. And then she decided she wanted to get pregnant, and she's single. Her boyfriend from high school attended the same college that she, quote unquote, did. She was not a student. I mean, she failed out of everything, but they attended the same college, and he had I don't know if it was girlfriend or if he had actually gotten engaged by that point, but they broke up. He had a serious new girl, and yet he was totally willing to have booty calls with the nanny, because why not, right? And whatever. Again, I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum, like you do you. But she was deliberately off birth control, you know, and I believe there was some sabotage of other forms of birth control, and just like it was to the point where I pulled him aside. I didn't even know him that well, and I pulled him aside, and I'm like, listen, here's your come to Jesus talk. Like, don't keep doing this. She's trying to get pregnant. You will be responsible for this child. And he would sort of shrug me off. And so she got pregnant on purpose. And that was right about the time I was able to go back to work. And we bought a house that did not have an in-law apartment on purpose. And I was like, look, no. This is a lot of no. Like, I can't watch this happen. I'm watching the train come down the tracks. Like, I can't watch this train wreck happen, because she was just not equipped. Yeah. She'd never held down a job. She had no qualifications for anything. She had no family support. We were it. And, you know, I feel like the story of why she came to us is a different deal. But so, well, okay. So we asked her to move out. We got this house, whatever. And I didn't hear from her. I got kind of the Disney version, like, everything's cute. Here's this cute baby. Like, I went and visited her in the hospital the day the baby was born, so I saw then. But I kept, like, she got involved with this guy right away, and moved in with him within, like, 6 weeks of the baby's birth. And I was like, that's a little quick. Okay, good. Yeah. Good on you. Lived with him for 18 months, and then moved back in with her toxic family. And that's when alarm bells started going off for me. And then she called me just after the baby turned 2. Effectively, my family has disowned me. I lost. This is my favorite sentence in the world. I've said it before, and it sounds like a line. It sounds like a line in a country song, and I can't say it without laughing because it's so bad. It's one of those, like, you laugh or you scream, right? I lost my job at the mayonnaise factory.
Oh my gosh.
See, like, it's the worst.
Didn't see that coming.
It's the worst. I don't know. I guess I thought, like, mayonnaise just magically appeared in jars. Like, I never thought of such a, oh my God, can you imagine the smell in the summer? Like,
all the vinegar.
Oh my God. So she also, She was living in one of those motels that rent like by the hour or the month,
Yikes.
And basically saying, look, I'm suicidal. Will you take the baby while I check into a hospital? And I'm like, of course. And so this is the middle of the night by now that she gets the baby tucked in. So my kids woke up to effectively, here's the sister.
Wow.
Right? We find out later.
That's quick.
It was crazy. But I mean, she lived with us for 4 months. And at the end of that time, she was engaging in really inappropriate behaviors that I was not comfortable with my kids being aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And so we asked her to move out. And 2 weeks later, she said, in that 4 months, she lost several jobs. I've never been fired in my life. So the concept was weird to me. But she lost like 4 jobs and just refused to work with, like DCF assigned her, here's a therapist, here's a parenting coach, here's a woman whose sole job is to help you find housing. And by the way, here's your DCF caseworker. And she just refused to work with any of them.
Wow.
And so at the end, it was like, look, you got to move out. I can't do this anymore. You can either go with the baby, and I knew DCF was like poised at the door to take the baby if that happened, or you can go yourself and we'll take care of her until you're ready. And she's like, no, I'm going to go on my own. And 2 weeks later, it was, I'm never going to get better. Can you keep her?
Oh, seriously.
And we haven't seen her.
Wow.
I mean, part of that is because I have a protection order now, but so there's that.
Yeah.
But because she couldn't maintain a program. Like my rule was, look, you have to have a job that has actual pay stubs. You know what I'm saying? You can't pay with sex. You have to have an apartment with your name on the lease, and you have to stop engaging in open sex work around kids.
I think that's fair.
And she didn't feel like those were rules she could follow, and so we've not seen her.
So her priority wasn't the kid.
Not at all. Not at all.
Well,
And,
thank goodness you were there.
I mean, yeah. What are you going to do? Like, you're going to say no?
Yeah.
And I wish I'd known sooner. It turns out that the man she was living with is a sex offender.
Oh.
He traffics in child porn.
Oh my God.
So I know without doubt that my child has been featured in inappropriate both acts and film.
Oh, wow.
She's still hyper flexible, especially in her hips. Her arm, her elbow had been dislocated 6 times when she came to us from being yanked up, like grabbed by the wrist and picked up,
Oh my gosh.
She still recalled, like she was physically abused by her caregiver during the day. Her maternal grandmother was her babysitter, I guess. And remember, she came to us at 2, right? And up until then, her maternal grandmother would have her during the day when her biological mother was in the mayonnaise factory. And she had there's a whiteboard on her kitchen wall where she kept track of how many times a day she had to hit the child.
Oh.
What?
And
Had to?
Had to. That was her words to DCF.
What? Okay.
A 2-year-old, Yeah,
Oh
I mean,
God.
and so, and they talk about she's the sort of the most profound case of emotional neglect that they've seen. Like when she came to me, so we got her mother into the hospital the first night, and then the next day, my older 3 kids go to school, my husband goes to work, and it's just me and this baby, this 2-year-old, looking at each other like, the just happened,
Yeah.
And so I was getting her lunch, and she said something. Now, she speaks like she's deaf. She doesn't project, and she doesn't enunciate clearly, because why would you bother if nobody ever listens to you? And she still does. We can't figure out how to get her to project better. But so she said something, and I couldn't understand her. And so I kind of half turned. I wasn't even facing her, and I was on the other side of the room. So it's not a case of like I turned too quick. And I just kind of turned at her, and I said, "What?" And she literally ducked and covered. like a defensive stance,
Uh-huh.
and did for months and months. If you asked her a question, she would burst into tears, or she would hide, or she would do like a military duck and cover kind of move. And it became clear that she was punished for asking questions, and she didn't know how to ask them. So try to imagine a 2 and 3 year old who didn't ask any questions.
Yeah, that's hard to imagine.
So this is what we got, and so we've got to work with it, and it's a different kid. It's totally different parenting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm so glad that you were there, and like it's such a huge responsibility to take on, especially when you weren't the one that planned for it, This woman just decided that she was going to have a kid, and then 2 weeks later or whatever, she decides she doesn't want it anymore. Like, just, it's so good that you were willing to take on that huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Ah.
Who
knows where she would have ended up. Just, wow.
I think I know. I think I know. So, I don't want to go into that, but
yeah.
I think it would not have been good. So, she's a trooper. She's the strongest kid I know. She's survived things I can't think about. Like, I won't read her DCF report.
Mm-hmm.
I could get it, but I don't need to know that stuff in detail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's just a trooper. You know what I mean? Like, all of the things, all of the weird quirks about her that make me just fucking insane sometimes, like those are survival skills. Like, you learn not to speak really loud if people don't want you to talk. You learn not to ask questions. She was sort of raised that pink is the only thing girls like.
Oh.
And she still now struggles with, like, if you give her a choice in a store, she makes a beeline for pink every time. And it's in a very toddler way. I don't know how to describe it, but she's sort of like a 3-year-old in a lot of ways. But she's so smart. And she's like, so one of the things she does that just makes you crazy, like, I hate it so much, is she stares. She'll just stare at you, and it's in like a horror movie way, like in The Shining when the girls just stand there and stare. That's what she do. Like,
wow.
she just stares, and it makes me crazy because I'm like, stop it, and she hates it if you do it to her.
Yeah.
So it's not a case of her doing something consciously to be a jerk.
Yeah.
She just. It's realizing that this is a survival skill for her. Like, she learned to be super observant at a very young age.
Yeah, it's like kind of inquisitively.
Well, it's more like a soldier.
Oh, just keeping on the watch.
Yes, what I'm saying. You got to keep an eye. You have to read the room at all times, because that's how you know whether you're safe.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had her almost 5 years.
Wow.
She'll be 7 in a couple months. So, 4.5 years now. And she still does this stuff. So that's hardwired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's about me recognizing, like, I have to unclench about that. I have to let it be okay that she does this thing that makes me crazy, because it's a survival skill for her.
Yeah. Well, and thank goodness she's in a nurturing home now where she can learn to use things that are hardwired into her as an asset, instead of it ruining her life. Because, I would imagine that in the future, that would be an advantage for her to be so observant and.
Honestly, I feel like if we're lucky, we can kind of steer her toward, nursing. Maybe, or law enforcement.
Oh, yeah.
Or she doesn't have good people skills. So it wouldn't be, she wouldn't be great, like, nursing on a floor, like a medical floor, but she'd do well in the ER, or she'd do well in, like, a recovery room. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement, she'd do well, very black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She'd do well in, like, not a front end job, but a back end job of some sort where you're not dealing with people, but you're doing something very methodically.
Yeah.
And we're hoping we steer her that way instead of, she would also be a really good serial killer. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the observance, and she doesn't bond well with people. She doesn't have an emotional connection with most people, and so that's to her benefit if she wants to be a serial killer. And you know,
Like I just said about having a nurturing home to steer her in the right direction.
I'm hoping.
Yeah.